Hello everyone, my name is Jason. I'm back in Japan, and let's see, I am a channeler and a Course in Miracles student and a musician. Nice to meet you. So today, there's three things that I'd like to do. So one is I'd like to talk about this dragon book that I found, again, and also talk about A Course in Miracles and a little bit about the morphogenetic field, and then I'd like to channel the answer to some questions I have. So first, when I was, I think around like 10 years old or something, I used to go to the library and I found this book about dragons. And I wasn't necessarily interested in dragons or dinosaurs, anything like that, but this book was interesting. And I've been looking for it ever since. So that was probably, 1985? I'm dating myself here, but 1985, I was about 10 years old. And I remember going to the library and I found this book and I thought, this is so amazing, because it wasn't a fictional book. It was a real book about dragons. And they talk about things like, for example, in New Zealand, they have the University of Verminology, which is in Christchurch, New Zealand, and all of these wonderful things. This was before the internet, of course, and but I recently have been looking these things up, and I couldn't find anything, and I couldn't even find the book for the longest time. And a few days ago, I just decided to look for it again, because I'm writing a book on dragons now, and I was talking about how I couldn't find the book, so I decided to look for it again, and there it was. Found it on Amazon. And so the name of the book is called Dragons, An Introduction to the Modern Infestation, and it's by a woman named Pamela Wharton Blanpede, which sounds like a pen name, so I'm not sure. It is not written in jest at all. It is written in a very scientific way, but I don't know. I don't know where it comes from and what it means, but it's very, very interesting. And there's a lot of information about Japan there, which is very exciting for me, so I can do a lot of research here. So that was the first thing I wanted to talk about. So that was very interesting. I think I've kind of jumped into a parallel dimension where I think I was in a parallel dimension where this book existed, and then I was in another parallel dimension where it didn't exist, and recently I've jumped into a dimension where it exists again, for whatever reason. Okay, and then the next thing I want to talk about is A Course in Miracles. There's four things I want to talk about. So, I tend to ramble. If you'd like to skip to the channeling, please feel free. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is the Course in Miracles. So I had a question about, so I think it's lesson 8. I have it written on the wall. It says, no one really sees anything. He only sees his thoughts projected outward. Okay, so that's one. And from the Manual for Teachers, I have on page 50, here it says, perception can make whatever picture the mind desires to see. Remember this. In this lies either heaven or hell, as you elect. God's justice points to heaven just because it is entirely impartial. It accepts all evidence that is brought before it, admitting nothing and asserting nothing as separate and apart from all the rest. From this one standpoint does it judge, and this alone. Here all attack and condemnation become meaningless and indefensible. Perception rests, the mind is still, and light returns again. Vision is now restored. What had been lost has now been found. The peace of God descends on all the world, and we can see, and we can see. Okay, so this is my question, though. So no one really sees anything. We only see what is, our thoughts projected outward, right? But we are sharing this world with all these other people. And so I've heard talk from, I think, Dolores Cannon from a long time ago, and she was talking about, I forget what she called them, background people or shadow people, and that, so we are, her concept at the time that she was speaking, she was saying that we are, so her concept was that we are creating this reality, and then the people we see, a lot of them are just extras. They're not really a part. They're not really there. So I'm not explaining it well, but so that kind of concept. So I'm just wondering if it's a shared illusion or if it's just we are each in our own kind of illusion. So that is my question. And I think there is a hint here with the idea of perception, right? So perception, it is how we see it. Yeah, I'm not explaining this very well, but so is it shared, or is this just everything I see just a projection of my insides, my thoughts? So that is the question first that I'd like to just channel and get the answer to. So here we go. Greetings, we are Esmerelda. We are a mermaid that exists in two places, you might say. We exist in a higher dimension of the Earth, and we also exist in the planet of Alpha Centauri. We have been communicating through this being many, many times, and we are on a very, very close relationship with this being, as we are this being and we have been this being. Now, as per the question about your projections, this is a very, very good question. And this question, it changes depending on the dimension that you are in. So by dimension, we don't mean a physical place or a place. It is a, we might say, mental place. It is a philosophical place. It is where you stand, how you view the world. And that changes everything. So this is the concept of perception. And so depending on your perception, that the answer to this question will change. So if you are in a lower third dimensional level, then you are in a shared perception, you might say. It is not a closed off, it is a shared perception, because you are, for the most part, unconscious. And if you are unconscious, then you are just receiving all of the reality that you see. You are not actually creating it. And this comes the word visioning. Visioning means truly creating the reality that you see. And if you are in the lower third dimension, you are just, you might say, on autopilot. You are not aware, you are not awake. And so the perception that you see is a shared perception, because it is the perception that is being broadcast to you. So, and the more that you wake up to who you truly are, and to the fact that you are one with Source, that you are one with God, at one, the more you realize this is what we might say is ascending, or going to a different dimension, is just becoming more and more aware of who you truly are. So this is the idea of dimensions. It's just that kind of concept. It is where you are in your heart or in your mind, where you stand. So you can shift dimensions. Within one day, you can go between many, many different dimensions. So yes, this concept of visioning, and the closer you get to visioning, then it becomes clear, and then you are more, we would say, projecting from inside of you. You are creating, and from inside of you, we mean from God. So the more that you become closer to God, the more that you project the light of God out onto the world. And this is a more expression of who you truly are. And once you realize that you are one with God, you are one with everyone. So then it is a shared perception, but in a different way, because you are sharing not the perception that you are being forced to receive, but you are sharing the perception of who you truly are. You are visioning, you are seeing. So the answer to this question is quite complex, we know, and it's quite hard to understand, but we would just say that it depends on where you are. It depends on where you are in your heart, what dimension you are philosophically, in your mind, in your heart, in your soul. And you are amazing travelers between many, many different dimensions, as we have already mentioned, that you are traveling throughout the day through many, many different dimensions. And so we would suggest, if you would like to explore more of this, try exploring more of becoming one at one. The more that you become a one, the more that you project out who you truly are. You project God, you project light. And that is the light workers. That is the light workers, we would say, not necessarily purpose, but that would be the ultimate expression of the light worker, is because you are God, and you are just expressing God. You are expressing who you truly are. You are shining your light. You are the lighthouses of the world. Okay. Right. more confused than I was. And then the next thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is the morphogenetic field. So I started hearing about this just a few years ago, that and it's so the morphogenetic field. The morphogenetics is a term that's borrowed from biology, but in the spiritual sense, it means that we are all connected. And the best way to think of it is of cloud computing. So that there is a cloud, like a hard drive. You save something onto Google Cloud or whatever, and it's on the net there. And so we share this cloud. All of us as human beings, we share it. And so if someone uploads something to the cloud, any human around the world, or if depending on on other universes, can download that information. So the idea of the yin and yang, the fight between the dark and the light, is this concept of, for example, light workers are uploading the light to the cloud, so that people, whenever they feel, for example, sad or depressed or in a dark place, there is that light there, and they can download that light. And the process, I think, involves your higher self. The higher self will decide. You can communicate with your higher self, so if you're feeling blue, feeling sad, it's a rainy day, things aren't going so well, then all of a sudden you just feel this hope that comes down, and that hope is you downloading the hope from the cloud. And by the same token, the negative things, for example, if you're having a wonderful day, then all of a sudden this sense of fear, sense of anger comes. You are downloading that as well. So that is why it's so important for light workers to be uploading all of this energy into the cloud, because that is what the dark does as well. And it is good to be aware of what you're doing. So that concept. Also the other concept that I've heard, and this is something I'm interested in, but I haven't been able to research enough, is the concept of ley lines, and that the ley lines are connected with the morphogenetic field. And where I used to live in America, close to Delaware and Ohio, there are a lot of the mound builders, the ancient Indians. They built these they call it the mounds, but we're not sure what they really were. But I think they're related, connected with the ley lines. And so the ley lines are very, very important places where you can upload things directly into the morphogenetic field. So that's a very interesting idea. And what was the last thing I want to talk about before I go on to channel again is what was I going to say? I've haven't been able to travel for the past 4 years, as probably most people have not been able to travel, and because of many things, because of not getting a medicine that everyone was forced to get, and other issues. But for the first time in 4 years, I was able to return to America for a while, and so before. The last time I went back to America, I hadn't started channeling, and I hadn't really been aware of energies as much. I mean, I was aware, but I wasn't, I guess, online. And so this time when I went back, I was much, much more aware of the energies and of the difference in the energies, and depending on the places that I went. And I found some pockets of shadows, and I wasn't used to it, I guess I might say. So I traveled to 2 or 3 different places that I had been clearing here on the astral level. There were some historically dark places, and I was actually able to go directly to the place. And it's funny, what is the word hubris? Thinking your ego, thinking that, what, I can handle this darkness. And when I went there, it was overwhelming. It was too dark for me. I couldn't even handle it. It was just, I felt numb. I felt closed off from everything, and I thought, wow, this is I'm just beginning this, and I wasn't really ready for it. So that was very interesting for me. I find that here in Japan, most places are very, very high energy, and I didn't realize how high they were until I went to some of these dark places. And yes, and in the book I'm writing about the dragons, I discuss that and how the dragons are related to that energy. So yes, so that was very interesting for me, and because I had been off the coffee. I finally quit coffee, but when I was there, it was so dark that in order just to kind of be semi online, I needed like a few cups of coffee, and I thought, wow, so there you go. Don't really know at what level you are until you actually test yourself and find you're not really ready for the things you think you were ready for. So that's that. And let's see, what was the other thing I wanted to ask about? So we asked about the lesson 8. No one really sees anything. He only sees his thoughts projected outwards. So I wanted to ask about the dragon book and how that appeared. Was this jumping a dimension, or so here we go. So, and then any other advice or ideas that they have would be wonderful. Greetings. Yes, we are Isis, and it is a pleasure to meet all of you and to talk to all of you. A lot of you I have met already in past incarnations, you might say, and in between incarnations. A lot of you who are listening to this are very connected to me. And what we would like to bring forward today is the idea that we always would like to bring through is the idea of peace and of love, because those are the only things that exist in this universe. They are the only things that are true. Everything else is shadow. Now, this being had traveled into places of shadow, 2 places of shadow. They are places of dark shadow, and he had planted some seeds in these dark shadows, and he claims that he was not ready, but he was as ready as he could have been at the time. And this whole trip for him was based on this idea. This was to show him the darkness and show him the lightness and show him the differences in frequency. There are pockets of peace and there are pockets of shadow. Now, the pockets of shadow, all you need to do in the pockets of shadow is shine the light. But sometimes the shadows are very dark, and you need more light. So this is part of what this being will be doing in the future. He will be bringing groups of light. Sometimes one is not enough. Sometimes he needs to bring his brothers and sisters along to shine the light. To open the portals that need to be opened there. And this is what thing that he needed to realize. And this is something that we have been telling him. And this is advice that we would give to all of you, is that you think you are waiting for your team, but your team is waiting for you. Your team is waiting for you to reach the point where you are ready, and that will trigger something in their DNA, and they will come to you. And they may be people that you already know, and they may be people that you don't know. And they will come to you, and they will not really realize on a conscious level, but they will come to you because they need to come to you, and they realize that you are one of you, one with you, one with your team. And this is something for this channel as well. He is waiting for his team, but his team is waiting for him to reach the point where he needs to be. And once they reach that point, they will become unstoppable light workers, lighthouses, creators of light. They will be able to clear shadows very, very quickly and very, very easily. And now to talk about this being's idea, this idea of this book. So he believes that he traveled into a parallel dimension. This parallel dimension idea has become very popular recently on your world, and there is a reason for that. There is a reason for everything, and this is the time for that. This is the time for all of you to be able to understand this concept. It is an overwhelming concept that there are many, many of you on different parallel dimensions. Now, from our perspective, we would not call them parallel dimensions. We would just call them, we wouldn't even call them dimensions. We would just call them you, different aspects of you. But for your third dimensional or slightly higher brains, it is hard to understand this concept. So yes, so we would use the term for you parallel dimensions. And yes, this being has jumped from one dimension to another. He was at a dimension, he was on the path, he was on the right path when he was younger, and then he went off the path. Now, this is not to say a judgment or anything like that. This is, he was on the path and he needed to go off the path in order to learn certain things. So he traveled into a parallel dimension for a lot of his life, and now he is back. See, now this coming online for him, this concept of channeling, of being a spiritual being, is something that he has always had, but he has pushed it down, deep, deep down for a long time, and ignored it, and tried to get away from it, and try to be a logical person, which was very difficult for him because he is not quite a logical person. This is not a judgment on him. He is what you would call a space cadet. He is not necessarily from this earth, and it has been very, very hard for him to, and even still is hard for him to meld or to fit into this earth. So he is mostly floating through this world, and many people will find when they meet him that yes, he is, as you would call, a space cadet. He is not all here, as you might say. He is in many, many different places all at once. And so this, of course, is not a judgment, but this is just who he is, and this is part of who he is. And as the time progresses, these skills that he have will become more necessary on the planet. As the dimension increases, he will find himself more and more at home as the ascension process increases, and he will find himself less and less a space cadet and more a part of this new dimension. So that is the idea. So he was in a parallel dimension for a while, and he was exploring different things that he needed to explore in order to come to terms with who he is. And he came online again not too many years ago, and he is back now on this dimension. And this is something that a lot of you are doing. You are hopping between different dimensions, and there's nothing wrong with this. This is part of the mechanics of your universe, and this is something that you are naturally able to do, and that you are doing many, many times. So we would recommend, we would suggest, if you are so inclined, to explore this idea. With blessings and peace to all of you. Okay. So yeah, I think that was all I wanted to talk about. Yeah, whenever she comes through, it's a very emotional feeling for me. All right, so anyway, thank you everyone, and if anyone is interested in any sessions with me, please refer to the links below, and I'll also put a link to the dragon book that I found, which is an amazing book. Yes, and anyway, ciao.